On this episode of Bougie Texas Barbecue, it's all about the pork. I'm going to show you how I turned one 14-pound pork shoulder into this beautiful feast. Let's do it. Okay guys, so the first thing we're gonna do is break down this pork shoulder. When you're picking out a pork shoulder, make sure you get a big one. This one was a little over 14 pounds. When I picked it out, I saw it had a decent sized money muscle. The bigger the shoulder, the bigger the muscle. Let's talk about how to locate the money muscle. The most common way to locate it is that it's on the opposite side of the bone, as well as having distinct marbling. Even when your local grocery store has them vacuum sealed, it has distinctive vertical lines along the meat, as well as having a cylinder shape at the end of the roast. Once you located your money muscle, it's time to separate. There are many ways to remove this money muscle. This is not a competition trim, this is for my average Oklahomies. Look for the thick, fat line and you're gonna cut alongside it. I'm choosing to remove it this way because I want to preserve as much of the pork belly as I can, as well as the rest of the roast. Now that it's removed, I'm going to move the rest of the pork shoulder to the side so I have extra space to trim down this money muscle. As I stated earlier, there is so much marbling within this cut, I'm going to remove as much fat as I can. And I'm going to trim it down to a cylindrical shape. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I want it to cook even. And once it's fully cooked, I definitely want to get those pretty slices. And once you're happy with your money muscle, go ahead and set it to the side so we can get into the pork belly. I originally wasn't going to make pork belly, but I saw the size on this one and I couldn't sleep on it. And let's be honest, if it's game day or you're just entertaining family and friends, who's gonna pass up a pork belly burnt end? So to get to the pork belly, I'm gonna have to separate most of the meat from the bone. Make sure you take your time as you're attempting this. The last thing you wanna do is nick a finger or cut into the pork belly too much. So take your time and follow the fat lines. Once you have your pork belly removed, you're going to trim it down to your preference. And don't throw away any trimmings or fat. I'm going to turn the rest of the shoulder into carnitas. And to make almost traditional carnitas, I'm going to need some lard. Now that my pork belly is separated, I'm going to cube it up and turn it into burnt ends. But this is my preference. You can absolutely smoke it whole just like a brisket. And now that we're done with our burnt ends, it's time to cube up the rest of the shoulder. Or you can even smoke the rest of it whole. But I'm going to turn these into burnt end sized pieces. Traditional carnitas are cut up just the same way, but they're fried in lard before braising. So what we're going to do is smoke these like burnt end and then braise them in lard, along with a few other ingredients. Now that we got everything separated, it's time to preheat the grill and get to seasoning. I recommend using avocado oil as a binder. For our carnitas, we're going to use orange pepper. For the burnt ends and the money muscle, they're getting OKJ's Kansas City rub. The fat that I saved from earlier is going in a cast iron pan, placing it on the hotter side of the smoker along with my carnitas. I place my money muscle right in the prime spot of my smoker, and I'm placing my pork belly on another hot spot. All that fat can definitely handle the heat from the smoker, and it's also going to protect my money muscle. Alright, now we're going low and slow, 250 degrees for 3 hours or until they reach an internal temp of 150 degrees. I'm officially 3 hours in and it's time to temp our pork. First up is the fattest part of the money muscle. It's a little under 150, but that's okay because I'm really happy with the bark. Next up was the pork belly. It was almost at 150. My carnitas were a little under, but that's okay. It's officially time to wrap. We're wrapping the pork belly and the money muscle the same: butter, honey, and brown sugar. I'm going to wrap them airtight and then back onto the smoker. Now before we can wrap our carnitas, we're going to need to prepare our braising liquid. Add all the rendered down pork fat. Yes, pork fat is going to add more flavor to our carnitas. Next, you're going to add 4 freshly squeezed oranges. You're going to want to include the peel as well. Next, you're going to add 1 large yellow onion and lots of garlic. Now this next step is almost as important as the rendered fat. You're going to add 2 12 ounces of Mexican Coke. If you can't find Mexican Coke, you can use regular Coca-Cola. Just make sure it's room temperature and not cold. You want to almost completely submerge your carnita burnt ends. Now the very last step is to wrap them nice and tight and back onto the smoker. We're going to continue smoking low and slow at 250 degrees for another hour to 90 minutes or until all the pork reaches an internal temperature of 200 degrees. I recommend resting the pork for at least 30 minutes before slicing. We're going to get into the money muscle first. This step is optional, but I highly recommend. Before slicing, I'm going to glaze my money muscle with some warm barbecue sauce. I don't recommend ever using cold barbecue sauce, especially on hot meat. And now it's time to slice. The second my knife went into the pork, I knew it came out perfect. And I absolutely fell in love with that smoke ring. I could also see the moisture within the meat. As you slice into the pork, it should keep form. It should not crumble or fall apart. These were perfect little medallion sized pieces. I'm going to give you guys a closer look of all the moisture within the meat. I rested the carnitas and the pork belly a little longer than 30 minutes, and I'm telling you guys, they did not disappoint. There was so much moisture within the meat and the smell was incredible. Now, how you decide to eat this is ultimately up to you. But if you need some ideas and you're entertaining guests, then using this recipe for a smoked pork charcuterie board. Well, that pretty much wraps up this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Till next time, guys, enjoy.